Coming in at number 10, the Battle of Molino del Rey. 799 American casualties versus 2,685 Mexican casualties. Commander Winfield Scott led American troops to their final assault on Mexico City. The target was Molino del Rey because they thought it was a factory for Mexican cannon production that seemed to be vulnerable at the time. The Americans would soon be successful at capturing Molino del Rey, but the rumors surrounding the production of Mexican cannons were false. Although the Americans were fooled by Santa Anna, the bloody battle at Molino del Rey happened to be a victory for the Union.
At number 9 was the Battle of Buenavista, with 660 American casualties and 3,533 Mexican casualties. The Battle of Buenavista was perhaps the most important and pivotal battle of the Mexican-American War. As James K. Polk was an advocate of westward expansion, he sent Zachary Taylor and his men to combine with forces that were under General Winfield Scott's expedition. Through the effort of over 5,000 men in conjunction with the heavy artillery fire, Taylor's troops were able to force Mexican troops to retreat. The Battle of Buenavista would prove to be one of the bloodiest battles of the Mexican-American War.
At number 8 was the Second Battle of Bull Run, also known as the Second Manassas. There were 13,830 Union casualties versus 8,350 Confederate casualties. The Second Battle of Bull Run was an immense victory by Robert E. Lee's Confederate forces. It was fought on August 20th to 30th as an offensive campaign against Union Major General John Pope. The second battle was more gruesome than the first Battle of Bull Run, considering that there were nearly more than 10 times the casualties from the previous one.
Number 7, the Battle of Antietam. 12,401 Union casualties versus 10,316 Confederate casualties. General Robert E. Lee led Confederate troops into Sharpsburg, Maryland in an offensive stance. General George B. McClellan of the Union Army prepared his troops for the brutal attack. The fighting began on September 17, 1862. Lee and his army had been quickly outnumbered, but despite the advantage, the Confederates maintained their position. General McClellan only sent a fraction of his troops into battle, while Lee had to keep his whole army engaged in order to avoid crushing defeat. By the second day of the battle, Lee's army had returned to Virginia. Overall, the Battle of Antietam was hands down the bloodiest single-day battle in all of American history.
Weighing in at number 6 was the Battle of Shiloh, with 13,047 Union casualties and 10,699 Confederate casualties. General Albert Sidney Johnston led a Confederate assault upon Ulysses S. Grant's Union forces. Although the Confederate attack was prevailing, General Johnston was wounded and replaced by General Beauregard within the first 3 days of battle. Not only did Confederates receive a new general, but the Union forces increased by a drastic 10,000 reinforcements. This allowed Grant's army to get out of the depths of the trenches and make a significant retaliation to eventually end the battle in a draw.
Standing in at number 5 was the Battle of Chancellorsville, 14,000 Union casualties versus 10,000 Confederate casualties. The battle is often recalled as General Robert E. Lee's greatest victory. Lee and his army faced Union General Joseph Hooker with an army twice his own size. General Hooker's fatal flaw was his lack to push forward with a larger army. Lee won this battle at the cost of one of his most trusted generals, Stonewall Jackson. Stonewall Jackson had been shot by one of his own men while trying to scout in the dark.
Number 4, the Battle of the Wilderness. 17,600 Union casualties versus 7,600 Confederate casualties. The Battle of the Wilderness started when Confederate troops led by Robert E. Lee and Richard Ewell clashed with the Union fighters led by General Ulysses S. Grant. Soldiers from both sides had been captured by stumbling into opposing camps due to the density of the woods. Also, the undergrowth had made it extremely difficult for the Union's large army to advance. Soldiers had little to no sight of their targets, often resulting in friendly fire. The Union had suffered many more casualties by the end of the battle, but General Grant refused to retreat, staying loyal to his promise with Abraham Lincoln.
Number 3 was the Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse. There were 18,000 Union casualties versus 12,000 Confederate casualties. In a series of repeated attacks, General Grant's Union army was stalled by Robert E. Lee in Richmond, Virginia. In the end, half of Lee's army was murdered or captured, Confederate generals Johnson and Stuart were captured, and Union generals Sedgwick and Rice lay dead.
Number 2, the Battle of Chickamauga. 16,170 Union casualties versus 18,454 Confederate casualties. The Confederate army performed a daring feat, attacking the Union troops where they were most vulnerable, who were led by William Rosecrans. Severely outnumbered and undersupplied, the Union troops were forced to retreat, but Braxton Bragg's Confederates mercilessly thrashed the Union through a gap in the Federal lines until the Union was forced to surrender.
Ending at number 1 was the Battle of Gettysburg, which would become known as one of the bloodiest battles in all of American history. there were 22,815 Union casualties versus 22,700 Confederate casualties. The Confederacy is now full of confidence after a smashing victory against the Union Army in Chancellorsville and decides to push north quickly. General Meade of the Union Army moved his army of 75,000 men to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. On July 2nd, Lee's army struck the Union Army. The battle continues to go back and forth for 3 days, ending on July 3rd. On the third day of the Battle of Gettysburg, General George Pickett of the Confederate forces leads a charge that would be unsuccessful, ending the battle. This attack by Pickett would become known as Pickett's Charge, marking the turn point of the Civil War and the eventual downfall of the Confederacy.